he called. I could hear the sirens down the street. They're coming. Okay, An. Can you stand outside and call them over? A few seconds later, 2 police cars and an ambulance came to a screeching halt, their blue and red lights glowing in the dark sky. I let the police officers pull me back and watched helplessly as Harrison was put onto a gurney and set into the ambulance. One police officer grabbed the yellow infamous tape that read, "Caution," and wrapped it around the spot where I could still clearly see Harrison's blood. I quickly averted my eyes elsewhere. 2 other police officers were questioning Annie and Henry. One of the paramedics looked at me from the back of the ambulance and asked, "Would you like to come with us?" I quickly nodded, jumping into the ambulance and trying to hold it all together as Harrison lied there in pain. I felt helpless and broken. Clutching Harrison's hand, I waited for our arrival at the hospital. I was pacing around the waiting room, itching to run into the surgical room. However, when I tried to follow Harrison after they rushed him out of the ambulance and into the hospital, a couple of hospital guards stopped me and tried to calm me down. So, that's how I ended up here. I finally stopped crying, my eyes puffy and red. My hair was a complete mess from the strong wind at the beach. My clothes were still damp, and sand was on every inch of my body. However, I didn't care. All I cared about was Harrison's safe being. An attendant had offered me coffee as I sat down on the leather-clad chairs. I denied her offer kindly. Sure, the employees here were nice, but I still wasn't feeling okay. The antiseptic smell and the white walls and white tiles were actually driving me crazy. "Where is he?" I heard Betty scream from the front desk. I could tell she was sobbing hard and wasn't taking it well. "Where the hell is my brother? I want to see him now." "Look, ma'am," the secretary began to say calmly. "I'm sorry, but please, just take a seat and sit tight. It'll take a couple more hours." "I don't have any more time to wait," Betty cried. I flinched as I heard something fall to the ground. Betty, Perry, and Nell had said calmly. Soon, the doors were open with Nell and Perry holding a struggling Betty in their arms. Scott quickly followed, his hair messy and his eyes filled with worry. Perry and Nell had sat down and tried to calm down Betty, who was torn. Scott sat next to me and grabbed my hand. "Can you tell me what happened?" Scott whispered and ran a shaky hand through his hair. "At least tell me something." "He's my best friend, Jesse. I can't bear to not know anything." I told him the whole story, and in between all that, Betty managed to calm down and listen. So did the 2 other boys. Scott broke down and cried after my story was told, and Betty got angry again, kicking the stand of magazines down. The doors of the waiting room banged open again, and Brian walked in with Jennifer, their eyes falling on us. I began to break down again just seeing Brian. He was my best friend, and I wanted nothing to do but talk to him about all my problems. However, I knew that Betty needed to calm down. The only remedy for that was Brian. He shot me a look of apology for wrapping Betty in his arms. At first, she started hitting him, but he never let her go. She eventually gave up and slumped into him, crying into his shirt. Jennifer had cuddled with Nell the whole time, probably sensing that he was hurt and broken. When Perry had told Brian and Jennifer the story, they went into shock. Jennifer stayed with me for an hour. She became my crying shoulder, and eventually moved on to a fidgeting and freaking out Nell. She cried with Nell, feeling his pain. "I feel so helpless, Abs," Nell cried, and a single tear fell down his cheek. "What do you do when the person who stood up for you all those times you've been picked on in junior high is in pain, and you can't help?" "Shh, Nell," Jennifer said, rubbing his back in comfort. "Everything will be all right." After that, everyone went into complete silence. Obviously, we were all caught up in our thoughts. We were too nervous and anxious that nothing left our mouths anymore. The clock read that it was 3 in the morning, and every second it ticked seemed like an hour. That didn't help with my worry at all. Betty sensed my worry and sat next to me, clutching to my hand in silence. I felt thankful for her comfort. She didn't need to say anything but just show me that she'd be there for me. Squeezing her hand, I let her know I'd return the favor. The door opened again. The doctor walked in, rummaging through some papers on his clipboard. I stood up, my heart racing faster as Betty squeezed my hand harder and stood up along with me. Everyone stood up as well. The doctor then said with a serious face, I would like to call on the guests for Harrison White's attention." The whole waiting room seemed to fill with silence as all of us paid close attention to the doctor. The tension in the room rose, and I could feel the nervousness of everyone. Then, what the doctor had said next made us fall to the ground with tears. He looked at all of us straight in the eyes. He then smiled and said, "Congratulations. Harrison is fine and has made it through the surgery. You guys can see him in 20 minutes since he's awake." We all erupted into cheers, crying with joy. Harrison was okay. I felt a huge weight being lifted off of my shoulders. I turned to Betty and engulfed her in a big bear hug. She sniffled and laughed. Giving everyone a bear hug, Nell said, "If anyone tells him I was crying over him, I will make sure you regret it." We all laughed at him. Brian came to my side and gave me a hug. "Congrats, Jesse. Now, remember, he just got out of surgery. Don't torture him with inner core." "Brian, shut up." I felt queasy as Brian and Betty walked out of Harrison's room and it was my turn. I didn't know how I was going to encounter him. I didn't know how he was going to react when he first sees me, especially after what happened in the beach when I confessed to him. I immediately flushed at the memory. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob and walked in. The first thing I saw was Harrison on his bed, the sheets pulled up to his chest. A couple of wires were attached to him here and there. And then my heart skipped a beat as his blue eyes met mine. He smiled softly, patting the bed next to him. I sat down slowly, trying not to hurt him. I didn't know what to say, so I just grabbed his hand in mine and started crying. "Babe, please calm down," Harrison said softly. "I hate seeing you cry." "I'm sorry," I laughed. "You just really scared the living crap out of me. Come here," he called. I looked at him with reluctance and motioned down to the side he was shot. "Don't worry." He positioned himself so he was sitting and grunted a little and finally opened his arms. Slowly, I crawled into him, letting his smell comfort my nerves and his heat radiate onto me. I took a huge intake of his smell into my nose and hugged him back. "You really scared me," I muttered and closed my eyes. "Don't ever do that again." Harrison kissed my forehead. "I'm so sorry I scared. I'm so sorry for everything. But don't you worry. Wolves have the ability to take this better than a regular man, and I'll heal in about a week." A thought popped into my head, and I looked at him curiously, and shock was evident in my eyes. "Weren't they wondering why you were healing faster than usual, or why you're not in deep sleep but actually wide awake?" "No, the doctors here are aware of werewolves. We live in a werewolf-infested town," he chuckled. "Jesse, about what you said at the beach," Harrison said. I tensed in his arms, and he stroked my hair comfortingly. "Look, I'm sorry," I began to say. "I love you too," Harrison blurted, shutting his mouth after that. I pulled away from him and stared at his eyes, looking for any indication of lying. Instead, all I found was complete honesty and love. I blinked once, too stunned to say anything. "What?" was all that came out of my mouth. Harrison said, looking at the space in the middle of my eyes. "Man, I have a hard time with these things," he said, getting mad at himself. I tried to stifle in my laughter. I lobe you." I couldn't help but crack up and laugh so hard that I began snorting. Harrison looked at me seriously and blushed from embarrassment. I pecked his lips and said, "Don't worry, I lobe you too." Things had certainly started to slow down. All the chaos was slowly subsiding. The darkness angel hasn't bothered me in the past 2 weeks. Harrison healed in a matter of days. His incident had actually brought the Crescent and Raven Pack closer, and they felt obligated to find the intruder, the person who harmed a wolf in the territory both packs shared. I dismissed patrol duties. I was finally getting enough sleep, but of course, I woke up with a start some nights drenched in sweat and trying to regain my breathing. Harrison slept over some nights due to his overprotectiveness of me. Some nights, Andrew or Amanda would sleep over. When he I felt weak, like I was being babysat, and eventually, I snapped at them. However, they quickly dismissed me with pained expressions. I give it about 3 months before things stopped completely and my life would go back to normal. Sort of. I was still trying to get used to the fact of werewolves, of healers. It was hard to believe that something I thought of a myth, not even less than 4 months ago. To conclude and summarize everything I have learned since then, Healers are the highest caste of werewolves. No one knew we were still in existence, though. We had the ability to heal any werewolf, of course. Every healer has a specific way, though. Some would heal with their eyes, their lips, their chanting, and their saliva even. Mine would be my hands. Back to the pack, Nell and Jennifer did not get together. Unfortunately, I thought, since the incident and judging from their scene in the waiting room, that they would. However, it seemed like a battle to Jennifer. She didn't know what was the best for her. I later learned she was insecure. She was afraid to give her heart away to Nell again. They found out they were mates when Nell was only 14 and Jennifer 15. She was young. He was scared. He rejected her because of it. The other reason was James. She loved James too. However, I wasn't going to get in the middle of her problem. It was her heart and her own rightful choice, and I respected that. However, another pair had finally become a couple. Betty and Brian were probably the most cutest, but the couple that showed the most public display of affection. Harrison would cringe, flinch, and his eyes would dilate every time the two would start to make out. However, I would simply put a hand on his chest, using my ability and calming his racing and angry heart. Basically, the two finally became a couple. After Harrison's incident, it brought them closer somehow. Betty gushed about how she found out Brian was her mate since she was 16, but was too slow to actually give his heart to him. This was due to her mother's death, of course. You're probably confused on the mate thing. Well, I am too, sort of. A werewolf pair finds their mate unexpectedly, even if they knew that person for the longest time. Another curse was put on them for killing most of the healers. A twist of fate would happen at any random time, leaving a stunned girl and a speechless boy. Oh, what a cruel world we live in. Back to the present. I never liked to talk about Harrison's incident. It scarred me for life. However, I forbade it to enter my brain. Sometimes, Harrison would joke around about it. Obviously, being alpha and all, he's used to these kind of things. And today, I was going on another date with him. I told you I have hands and could open the door myself, I groaned, slapping him across the head right after I exited my house. Ouch, Harrison said, narrowing his eyes at me. He still held the door open to his car. I just wanted to be nice. You're so ungrateful, he playfully pouted, turning his head away like he didn't want me to talk to him. This was our usual greeting. I wrapped my arms around his waist, laughing and resting my chin on his chest. When he still refused to look at me, I kissed his neck once, hearing the low growl at the back of his throat. I smiled against his neck and started laughing my real laugh. Yeah, the one with the snorting. Harrison began laughing along with me. I kissed his nose and said, "You can't stay mad at me." He took both of my hands in his and looked down at me. His blue eyes seemed to have more spark than the stars in the sky. He smiled genuinely, resting his forehead on mine. Inhaling my scent, he said, "You look beautiful, Els." I snorted. I just slipped on light dark skinny jeans, a gray, knitted, oversized, long-sleeve sweater, black boots from Steve Madden, and my hair was up in a nice bun with a headband on my head. My makeup was minimum, mascara and eyeliner only. To finish it off, my ears were studded with black pearls and I carried a black clutch. Harrison did say to dress comfortably. "You're the one that looks good," I admitted, biting my lip. I trailed my eyes down his body once and took him all in. He wore a dark gray button-up rolled up to his elbows and straight-fit jeans that hung low on his hips. His Nikes were well kept and his hair was short, but not overly so. He cut his hair and I found it attractive on him. Eventually, I hopped into his car and he drove off to a cozy pancake house. I smiled. He knew me too well. I loved eating at comfortable places rather than high-class restaurants where you had to sit so straight. It's not that I don't like eating at classy restaurants. I just preferred less crowds, small places, and a cozy feel. Another reason was the waffles. I loved the waffles here that I could eat at any time of the day. Our next stop was what surprised me. "The Pack House?" I said, looking at the 2-story building in front of us. I unbuckled my seatbelt and waited for the engine to die before getting out of the car. "Yeah," Harrison said, coming around the car and slinging an arm around my shoulder. I just wanted some alone time with my girl. I poked out my tongue. "I'm not your girl, but you're my man." "Whatever you say, boss," he said, rolling his eyes. He took his keys and rummaged through them. When he finally found the right key, he pushed open the door. I just wanted some peace and quiet. Take a break from all the work. Plus, I haven't spent alone time with you. I just want peace and quiet with my mate. I simply nodded. We decided on popcorn, a warm blanket, cuddling, and a movie. After debate on what movie to watch and many insults back and forth, I had won. With a grin, I happily skipped to the DVD player under the flat-screen television and pushed Captain America in. Eventually, after the part of his transformation, I got bored. I had to admit that we watched this particular movie way too much. This was all due to my obsession with Chris Evans and his nicely sculpted chest. I started to trace circles on Harrison's stomach, my head leaning against his chest. I could feel his muscles underneath the fabric of his button-down. Looking up at Harrison, I found him fast asleep. His mouth was slightly agape, and his head dangled off the back of the couch. I chuckled at the scene. I pushed myself off the couch a bit and pressed a lingering kiss on Harrison's soft and full ones. I giggled as his arms tightened around my waist. Pressing another kiss to his neck, his weakness, I smiled as I heard him groan. I stifled in my laughter. Watching him sleep was actually peaceful. Harrison was truly handsome. I trailed my finger down the side of his face softly, tracing the side of his closed eyes, high cheekbones, his strong jaw, and finally, the scar on his lips. His eyes fluttered open as I lingered my fingers there. "What are you doing?" Harrison eyed me suspiciously but kissed my fingers. "Nothing," I said, looking at him straight in the eyes. "I just think you're really handsome," I said bluntly. His arms pulled me closer to him. He smirked down at me and pressed a quick kiss to my lips. "And," he said, giving me a peck. "Your peck?" "Beautiful peck." He rested his forehead against mine, gulping and still looking at my lips. "You're really cheesy," I smiled, brushing my lips against his. I pressed my lips against his in a soft, tender kiss to show just how much I loved him. However, it quickly turned into the ones one of us had to end before we couldn't stop. But this time, none of us stopped. Harrison pulled me on top of him, my legs going on each side of him on the couch. I pressed my chest close to his own, running my hands through his short black hair and locking them behind his neck. He groaned as I tugged at the bottom of his hair. He ran his own hands down the curves of my body painfully, slowly. Somehow, my thick sweater ended on the ground, and all that covered my body from his hands was the thin fabric of my inside shirt. Harrison trailed kisses down my neck and jaw, casually nipping and grazing his teeth here and there. He went as far as to kiss the top of my breasts that were exposed at the top of my shirt. I moaned loudly, clutching him closer to me. I felt him smile against me. While he ran his hands up and down my legs, my hands found its own way to the buttons of his shirt. Slowly, I unbuttoned them until the front was completely open. Harrison returned to my lips, shivering and grunting under my touch as I roamed my hands down the tight skin of his chest and abs. He shrugged off his t-shirt, standing up from the couch. I wrapped my legs around his waist and felt as if I was the only one supposed to be there, like a puzzle piece. When I realized we were in one of the rooms, I felt my heart skipping a beat and kneed in between my legs. I started whimpering, wanting him more than ever. Harrison laid me on the bed, kissing me painfully slow. He took off my inside shirt, massaging my breasts through my bra and moaning loudly against my mouth. He pressed his whole body against mine, keeping his weight off of me at the same time. He left my mouth again, leaving kisses all the way down to my hips, which caused me to buck my hips forward and moan. When he returned to my face, I trailed my hands really low, tracing the edge of his jeans. His hips bucked forward, grinding against my bottom half. He grunted, keeping his firm, strong hands on my hips. Every place he touched me was set on fire. His body was flushed on mine. I shivered with delight under his touch and kisses. He, too, felt the same. I knew, and I was sure now, that I wanted him. I tugged on Harrison's belt buckle. He pulled back, a pained expression on his face, his hands tracing my face softly. "Are you sure?" he whispered in a pained voice, his eyes a steady black. I nodded, and I was sure my eyes held the same darkness. It reflected the same want in his eyes. That was all it took before his lips crashed down on mine. Our clothes were shed and were now on the floor, our naked bodies flushed together. I love you so much, Els, Harrison whispered in my ear, smiling against it. Before I could tell him I loved him too, a loud cry of pleasure took its place as Harrison started mating with me. My phone beeped, waking me up from the best sleep I have had in my entire life of sleeping. I smiled, stretching and feeling the pain in between my legs. However, it was all worth it. I felt tons more closer to Harrison, and making love to him was indescribable. I loved him so much. Harrison groaned as I sat up, trying to reach my phone on the table lamp. I laughed as he tried to pull me back next to him. "Where are you going?" he said groggily, still not opening his eyes. 2 times in one night didn't make you exhausted? Holy crap, I got myself a winner. "Shut up," I squeaked, feeling the blood rush up my neck and into my cheeks. I pulled his arms around my waist off and stumbled out of bed. I pulled on my jeans and shirt, grabbing my phone on the way out. I got to call my mom before she worries. No service in here. "I'll be back in a few," Harrison groaned, flipping so his face was buried in the pillows. I rolled my eyes at him and slipped on my shoes before walking out in the cold night air. My face flushed again as I realized we stayed in the whole day. Unlocking my iPhone, my phone froze. Text message. Unknown numbers. My eyebrows knitted together and I couldn't help the curiosity that grew. My thumb pressed, "Open message." Once the message opened, my hand began to shake and my body grew cold. There on the screen was a video. I haven't played it yet, but the video clearly showed a lady, her dark hair drenched and a new scar cutting across her forehead. Her hands were tied behind her back, and her feet were tied together while she sat on a single chair. Her white shirt was soaking into her shirt, dirt stains visible from the tiny player. Her brown eyes, filled with hatred, looked straight into the camera. Dim light spilled on her, splaying shadows of her and the items around her in what seemed like a warehouse. "Mom," my voice trembled into the night, barely above a whisper. Hesitantly, I pressed the button that scared me the most that evening. "Jesse, whatever you do, don't come looking for me." "Jesse, whatever you do, don't come looking for me," my mom warned, looking straight into the camera. Her eyes held determination and meaningfulness. That was until she had to squeeze them tight and let out a scream of pain as the bucket that hung above her spilled its contents. She hissed and screamed, making me jump and want to drop the phone. Her skin began to bubble, steam emitting from her skin. Patches of skin became red. In 2 seconds, her skin went back to normal. "Wolfsbane." She opened her eyes again, looking hatefully at something or someone behind the camera. She spat blood out. "What makes you think I will tell my daughter to come here?" There was no reply, and she chuckled dryly. "You're pathetic," she spat, almost springing from her seat and tearing the ropes tying her down with her non-human strength. However, the wolfsbane was spilled onto her again. I shut my eyes tight, letting her scream that died at the end from her sobs of pain numb my ears. "Go ahead," my mom hissed out from gritted teeth. "Kill me." She then looked straight at the camera, her eyes dilating and patches of fur wanting to come out of her skin. I could see the muscles moving under her arms and on her face. The wolfsbane was holding her wolf back. A single tear spilled out of her eye before she said, "Jesse, I'm sorry. I love you and Andrew both. Please don't come after me. I would rather die than to live with the thought of my baby girl buried. We'll be fine. I'll find a way to get out of here." Wolfsbane was spilled onto her again. I gripped the phone tighter. In the middle of her agonizing cry, the video ended. It was only then did I realize how my whole body was shaking. Tears soaked my face, dripping down my chin and onto my shirt. My hands gripped my phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. I could feel the blood draining from my body, a cold darkness sweeping over me. But I wasn't scared. Yay, I was furious. My eyes were dilating and I could feel my wolf itching to come out of my body. However, I held it in. I had enough with whoever was playing sick jokes on me. They were hurting everyone I loved for a reason I'm not even sure of. To get as far as making my mom suffer made my stomach turn and cause a burning hatred to build up. I knew what I had to do. I had to find my mom and kill the person behind it all. Even if I die fighting. My mom has done so much for me, and now it was my turn. Scrolling down the screen to the very bottom of the message, my claws were already coming out. A simple message was on the bottom. Old Jerry's Donuts Warehouse. 9:30 p.m. Fail to show up and your mother dies. I checked my watch. 8:00 p.m. Stuffing my phone in my back pocket, I strode towards the garage of the pack house, taking Harrison's keys. Opening their secret cabinets, I stuffed a gun that shot bullets coated with wolfsbane, 3 grenades, and a silver long dagger that was coated with wolfsbane into the trunk of the Avalon Pack's backup car. Dear Harrison, babe, mate, I began to write on a long sheet of paper. I knew Harrison was fast asleep upstairs, and he would never approve of me going after my mom. He would keep me bound up like some weak person and do the job for me. However, this was a job only I could do. I felt a traitor tear spill from my eyes, and soon, more came after. I wiped them away, sobbing quietly. I returned my shaking hand to the paper. This is either a see you later, or I'll come back soon. No goodbyes intended. I don't feel this is the end for us. Please don't try to look for me. I will explain everything. If I come back, and if I don't, then I'm truly sorry. And I know you're probably going to be that selfish, idiotic moron you are, and come and look for me. I'm not going to stop you. But please let me do this by myself. My mom's in trouble, and it's my turn to be independent and stop relying on you. Just know, if I don't come back, it's not your fault, it's mine. But don't hold on to the thought of that. I will come back. Thank you so much for teaching me the true meaning of love, of weakness, of pain, of laughter, of a best friend, of sadness, just everything. But most of all, thank you so much for showing me the true meaning of happiness. And you're my happiness. I love you so much. Or perhaps, I love you so much. You gave me everything that no one else could. I decided to end there. My face was again drenched in tears. I couldn't bear the thought of dying. But in a situation like this, there is a 50% chance I won't be coming back. The thought of Harrison's pain alone was unbearable. I kissed the paper, clutching it to my heart before leaving it in the key bowl. I love you, I whispered, before climbing into the car and driving off. Harrison wouldn't hear me. He was fast asleep. When a wolf is asleep, their senses are dimmed. For once, I was thankful Harrison didn't follow me, or the same incident as before would have happened. I cringed at the memory. 9:20 p.m. The road to the warehouse was empty. This part of town has been the less crowded. Usually, this was the best place to put annual carnivals because it was so open, and not many civilization was put within a 10-mile radius. The old Jerry's Donuts warehouse was once here, but had closed down about 20 years ago. The warehouse was torn down, the paint peeling off the walls. Some letter of the name had fallen, so now it read, Odd Airs DNT. I parked about a mile down from the warehouse. Therefore, whoever this darkness angel was, couldn't hear my car as I arrived. I hid behind a bush, my whole body sweating from the nervousness of them all. I eyed the warehouse cautiously, and flinched as I saw movement from behind a window and a light turning on. I strapped on my belt, stuffing the 3 wolfsbane grenades and the silver dagger into the pockets. I stuck the gun in the waistband of my jeans and under my shirt, feeling the cool metal against my hot skin. As I thought of how to approach and tried to devise a plan in my head, I heard not 1, but 2 screams of pain. My eyes widened in horror as I froze in place. Who could the second person be? It sounded like a female scream. Aunt Kara? Amanda? Betty? Jennifer? They screamed again, waking me up from my reverie. I was running out of time. 5 minutes, and my mom and whoever the second person was could be killed. When they screamed again, a burst of confidence flowed through my body. You're strong, my wolf whispered. As my wolf continually tried to soothe my nerves, I gave confident strides towards the building. A strange smell wafted into my nose, making my stomach churn and my eyes burn. Wolfsbane surrounded the perimeter. I growled in disgust. However, this didn't stop me from walking towards the door and slamming it open. A cold breeze and wretched smell hit me once the door banged on the wall. The open space was lit only by a dim light. Surrounding it were boxes, buckets with vile liquid that I assumed was wolfsbane, a table on the far corner, beer bottles scattered on top, and violent tools used to torture someone. My eyes wavered on the two people in the corner. Their eyes froze on me and widened. Their wrists were chained up on the wall, and so were their ankles. They were practically dangling from their wrists, which looked like their arms wanted to fall out from soon. The places the chains were touching were red, new skin surfacing every 1 second, only to be burned again by the chains. The girl looked about my age. Her sapphire eyes looked at me in agony. Her platinum blonde hair was a mess. Dirt smudged her perfect complexion. New scar wounds ran up and down her arms and legs. She was only in a nightgown. I only realize now that they abducted her from her sleep. Her eyes read, "Run now," as she shook when a breeze swept across the room. "Daisy," my voice quavered as I recognized her. I had to hold on to the doorframe from the sight of her torture. It was hard to digest it all in, and for me to see it in person was undeniably heart-clenching and gut-punching. "What are you doing here?" she whispered quickly. "Jessie, you have to go. Now." I shook my head, refusing to meet her eyes. The ones that were empty. All because of me. "Jessie, baby," my mom said in a hushed whisper. "Please leave." My mom still looked the same as on the video, except now, her scar on her forehead had healed. To see her suffering for me brought tears to my eyes. None of these girls deserved it. I should be the ones in their places. It's me that they wanted, not them. "No," I said, striding forward and ignoring their protests. "You guys don't deserve this. You don't understand, Jessie," Daisy urged. "You need to leave." As I touched Daisy's chains to try and break them, I flinched back and hissed in pain. I looked down at my hand to see a burn, only to be replaced by new skin and heal quickly. "Honey, don't touch the chains. They're covered in wolfsbane," Mom warned, moving towards me as if she could take me away from them. "I'm so sorry," I said, looking both of them in the eyes and back to where their bare skins touched the chains. "I will get you out of here." I heard an applaud from behind me. I jumped backwards in surprise, backing up towards the wall on instinct. I could barely make the outline of a figure in the back corner where there was no light. I squinted my eyes, trying to see who it was while resting my right hand on my dagger, getting ready to pull it out. I growled, my lips stretched to expose my clenched teeth. "Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. So glad you could join us. I have to say, I'm slightly disappointed you showed up. I was looking forward to watching these two women suffer some more." My growling stopped immediately. I knew that voice. It was all too familiar. The same cold darkness from earlier enveloped me like a hug. My eyes widened and my hand on my dagger started to tremble. My legs numbed, and soon I felt the need to throw up and pinch myself. This couldn't be real. A handsome man stepped out from the darkness and into the light. His black, shiny shoes clacked on the hard, cemented ground. He wore a clean, pinstriped button-down and his favorite slacks. His brown hair had grown out and he wore it slicked back now. His green eyes stared right into my soul, and I felt a sudden fear. His strong features moved and crinkled as his lips stretched into a sinister smile. My heart dropped, and I didn't know whether a joke being played with me or this was some type of dream. My legs buckled slightly from wanting to fall on the ground, and the man in front of me chuckled. Aside from that, I felt nothing. I was too numb to care. "Daddy?" My voice came out as a whisper. He waved off the name I called